Welcome to Legal Soundings, the podcast from Harbor, where leaders from across the legal ecosystem chart the course for the business of law. Whether you're navigating change inside a law firm, leading legal operations in-house, or building the next generation of legal technology, Legal Soundings is where insight meets action.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Chung. I'm a practice group leader at Harbor, leading the corporate legal solutions practice. And I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you about the state of the industry report that Harbor worked with the CLOC organization in producing in 2025. I have joining me today, Oyango Snell and Stacy, Lettie, both part of the CLOC organization, to talk a bit about what does the SODI report share and tell us about the state of legal operations today. What does it mean for our leaders? And how do we then think about how the future of legal operations will look like as we continue to advance the journey? So thank you, Stacy and Oyango, for joining today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So the first question, as we think about what the key findings from the survey tell us, is really about the fight that legal ops has had historically about trying to get a seat at the table. Legal operations has matured so much over the years, and the data from the 26-25 survey is showing that the fight is over, meaning legal operations has a key role in helping to shape the future and the direction of the legal department. And so the question now is, what do legal ops leaders need to do to measure what they're doing well, to think about how they should be running the department now in the midst of so much change in the industry? So I'm going to start with a question for Oyango. You've had a front row seat in this evolution, right? Seeing kind of how this industry move. What does this year's data, in your view, tell us about where legal operations actually stands?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I'm great to be here with my board member and colleague, Stacy. So from my lens, when I've gone out, when I've been in this role now for about 18 months, and in the conversations that I've been having, as well as the information that comes from the survey, it's kind of meeting right up in sync with each other about more demands from in-house legal teams, obviously technological challenges and onboarding and implementing artificial intelligence and tools. But what I find very interesting, and you led off with it, Lauren, is there has still been, and still is rather, this continuous fight to have a seat at the table. I think depending on what organization you're in, legal ops is more elevated in some organizations than it is in others, right? So you still have people clawing for that sort of leadership position or leadership discussion, rather, from a strategic perspective when it comes to legal ops. But what I think is even more critical is that although you have this significant kind of, dare I say, taking of these strategic level leadership seats, it's now up for us, the professional, legal ops professional, to kind of think about not what's owed to us on the business side, but how do we drive for strategic business level changes? Because many legal ops folks do have a seat at the table, as you kind of referenced in your opening comments. And now it's about how do we take that position and drive towards helping businesses succeed on a daily basis through the legal in-house team. So that's just one big anecdote that I'll share to kind of get us kicked off.
Yeah, I love that, because I do think there is so much opportunity for how legal ops can position, right, itself with that seat, with that role now becoming so foundational to the maturity of a legal department. Stacy, anything else you'd add to kind of the perspective more broadly on where is legal ops today in your view?
I think that, even to take what Oyango said one step further, I think that the idea of legal operations has really evolved. Legal operations used to be the job. Now I almost think that legal operations is becoming part of the job. And the job itself is evolving. And what we do as legal operations professionals has become so much bigger. We fought for the seat at the table, but I think the table has changed. And the people who are sitting at the table has changed. And what we are being able to get involved in, evolve into has changed, I think, dramatically. Even in the last couple of years, particularly probably in the last 18 months, we're seeing this dramatic change in what is legal operations. And it's encompassing so many more things than it did even 5 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we've been tracking that, right? And one of the key findings from the report, the Harbor Law Department survey in partnership with CLOC, has really been that we have seen an elevation of the role far beyond kind of the truly operational nature of what you would think of, right? When you think of legal ops, right? There's a strategic element to it, really helping to think through where is the future of the legal department? What does the law department of the future look like? And making sure that legal operations as really a key partner in that journey is really kind of what the data is showing in terms of how that role has evolved. So I love that. And I think what you're saying very much resonates with, frankly, the data and what I have seen in the industry, talking with key leaders and their journey in this process. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the actual data points that I think are so interesting that also talk a bit about the shift in the industry, in the market. The overall theme is demand is high, budgets are flat, headcount is flat. And this is the what the data is showing, right? There is this kind of a structural productivity gap, right? Because the reality is law departments are not able to grow at the level of the demand that is coming in to be able to handle all of the volume. And so curious about what you're hearing from CLOC members in terms of the challenges they're experiencing in handling the growing legal demand, and what has that meant to propel the maturity of legal ops functions coming alongside to support kind of the growing needs of the legal department.
I think that legal operations is more critical than it's ever been before because, I hate the saying this, do more with less, because there's no less. Like there's never a less. There's less money, but there's never a less. And the work is the work is the work. And so our job as legal operations professionals is to try to figure out where to slot in the right people, write the right processes to get the work done the most efficiently, and then figure out how do we lean into the available technology that we have to us, which, by the way, changes on an hourly basis to get this work done. And how do you do that while also figuring out what are the strategic priorities of the company you're working for and how you're supporting that. And I think legal operations, if done properly, legal operations is uniquely positioned in an organization to look at that as a whole, with a holistic view, to pull all those things together in a way that makes sense. And I think the intrinsic value of having a legal operations professional is putting that person in a spot to see it all and be able to sort of take all of the pieces of the puzzle and put them together in a way that really makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I find is legal ops has that kind of the core role in bringing all those pieces together in a way that I think, my observation, it has elevated again the role of the function and the team and the professionals, and has really propelled its maturity, right? I think it wasn't necessarily that it's a reactive, in my view, a reactive posture, but frankly, I've seen legal departments and legal operations professionals take a much more proactive lens as they think about, again, how do they help advance the maturity of the legal function in an environment where everything needs to be thought differently, right? It is going to be not about less, but about how do we do more with what we have. And the next topic, kind of given that, right? I think how could we not have this conversation without talking about AI? I'm curious to hear, again, the survey data has been really clear that 85% of legal departments have some formal AI oversight. And this number is pretty remarkable, right? Meaning they have leadership, they have dedicated focus on the deployment of AI in the legal department. But the question really is, what is AI looking like inside the legal department today? What are you hearing? Are law departments actually deploying it in a way that has been scaled? So curious about observations here, particularly on deployment and application of AI in the legal department, given the backdrop we just talked about, which is demand is increasing, budgets and headcounts are flat. How do we do more given this environment? So thoughts here, Oyango.
Yeah, so when we were having this conversation last year, we were having conversations about whether or not legal in-house teams are even using AI and whether or not they're leaning into it or whether or not it's still a spooky thing to do. Those were the conversations that we were having. And I think now, this year, we're talking about how AI implementation is helping impact positively the bottom line of the organization, not just the legal department, but the entire enterprise. So we've moved from we're scared of it, we don't know what it is, to the significant demand of not only using it and executing it, but legal operation professionals being at the epicenter of communicating these tools, of building these tools, of leveraging the legal team and IT in order to help drive the business of the organization. So we've seen quite a transformation, so to speak, from being nervous still, and we still are a little nervous. There's still some things happening that we're not aware of, but to this place of not only using AI, but thinking about how it impacts the bottom line and what are the tools that can be used, whether it's building agents from agentic AI or whether it's generative AI use, as well as working with outside counsel as to what they're doing in order to help elevate the use of AI in the practice. So we've seen quite a dramatic change.
Yeah, I love it. Stacy, what are you seeing? What do you think is actually working in the in-house legal function with respect to AI today?
So I think Oyango's right. I think the conversation a year ago was very theoretical, like what is AI going to do to us? And there was a lot of fear. I think a year later, what we are now talking about is how practically does this work? And listen, there is no question that some of the things we dreamed about didn't actually come to fruition and they don't work in practice in the way that we wanted them to. But that being said, I think there's a lot of places where AI is just really going gangbusters. I think things like document review and contract, I think it's transforming contract review. I think it's transforming document analysis and giving us data in our documents that we've never really been able to capture. I think it's going to completely turn the concept of knowledge management on its head in a way that we never envisioned in the days of, Word docs or whatever you used to do. I think it's still, I think in things like large M&A transactions where we're trying to get analytics from documents, I think in reviewing litigation, doing pre-litigation work and regulatory review, I think it's doing amazing things when it is deployed properly. I think we're still struggling with some of the more technical capabilities because I think even though we all have really big dreams, I think we get back to our companies and there are limitations that we have to live within. So I think we have bigger dreams and we're actually yet able to implement, but I think it's coming. I'm really excited to get to CGI to see what some of our vendor partners are doing. I've gotten a lot of emails about some of the things that people want to show me next week, and I'm super excited to see what the vendors are doing because in a lot of respects, what I'm seeing is they are reacting to what we are telling them as professionals that we want to see. And so some of the emails that I'm getting are directly related to conversations I had a year ago. Like, hey, I would love to see your product do X, Y, and Z. And now it's doing it.
I love that.
So I'm excited to really be able to walk around, talk to some of the vendors and see what's really happening out there and be able to touch and feel some of this technology because I think it's going to surprise me.
Yeah. I love that part actually, Stacy, because I'm such a big believer in the importance of the partnership across the ecosystem, right? So, for what you just said, as a user of technology, legal technology, being able to converse with partners in a way that allows them to think about the use cases and the reality of what it means then to be able to deploy this in the legal department and then to make changes appropriately to their tools that align with that. That kind of conversation, that kind of partnership, whether it's through vendors, whether it's outside counsel, I just find to be so critical to really move this industry. And I love that you're seeing that happening real time with some of the vendors that you're meeting. So it'll be really cool to see again at CGI how we all kind of come together. But I think that's going to be an incredible opportunity to share some of that feedback and hear where the vendors are going with some of these tools as we continue to evolve the industry. So it'd be great. When I think about everything that we talked about to date, right, so far into conversation, it is really coming out of the key findings from the State of the Industry report that we did in partnership, obviously, with the Harbor Law Department survey. Curious about anything as we think about legal departments getting ready to advance their maturity journey. What do you see as the value and the benefit of benchmarking and participating and being part of kind of the data journey? What do you see as the biggest value in that, Stacy?
Oh, I think that we are all incredibly fortunate to be in this profession at this moment when we are all actively shaping the future of it, literally on a daily basis. And participating in these benchmarking and getting the benefit of looking at that data is absolutely invaluable because it helps you shape your decisions going forward. It helps you validate that the things that you are doing in your team or your department are consistent with the best practices of other people or other companies. And I also think that it helps you to develop your own business case for what you're doing. I think in some places in my career, I thought benchmarking wasn't as important. But when things are changing as rapidly in my job, in my industry, in the tech department, things are changing so quickly, it's really hard to keep up. And I think benchmarking and being connected to your community and your peers is the best way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oyango, what are your thoughts on obviously the data, participating in a benchmarking study that gives us this kind of insights, perspectives from your lens?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Stacy on her point of view on this. I think mature institutions sometimes get comfortable with hearing their success, and I think benchmarking helps them kind of do a gut check. Are we headed in the right direction? And if not, what else is happening in the marketplace that we should be considering? Legal ops professionals, the founders that created CLOC many, many moons ago, they were benchmarking when they got together. What are you doing? Well, what are you doing? Well, how do you do this process? Well, we're having problems with our GC understanding this, or we're having problems with our CEO understanding that. And that's how CLOC was formed. They got together to talk about best practices and they benchmarked in real time through conversations, through dialogue. And that then grew to where we are now. So benchmarking is not only important for the industry, it's important for our entire existence. Being able to understand the best practices that are out there and how those best practices are being elevated or changing or transforming, and how the market and how legal operations professionals are at the epicenter of that response and that transformation and have the opportunities that they have to kind of drive kind of sort of a more enhanced strategic vision forward. So I think it's significantly important to the industry, to our founding as an organization. And I think people can really do several things from getting that sort of gut check, but also thinking about how they can grow and how they can transform their practices and their business.
Yeah. I've been, the Harbor Law Department survey has been around for over 20 years, and I was part of the original first year survey, right? So I've seen the opportunity to see the survey grow over the years. And, one of the things that I always like to tell every legal department is a best in class legal department needs to be on top of where they stand, right? You need to know where you stack up at any given point. I have some organizations say, well, do I need to do it every year? Can we just do it like every other year, every 5 years? I think the part of the practice of participating in benchmarking is not just the data in itself, but the discipline of making sure we're looking at that data on an annual, regular basis, right? And so when I think about the maturity, going back to how legal departments and legal operations have matured, so much of it has been a maturity in the data journey. How much transparency, how much data-driven decisions legal departments and legal operations leaders are making, right? And where does that data come from? It's resources like this that help law departments not to stay comfortable, right? They're going to be challenged when they find out, oh, we were at the median. Now we're at the third quartile on some of these metrics. What's going on? What are things that we need to be looking at? And so that foundational element of making sure that law departments are kind of on their toes, right? Keeping themselves on their toes, and making sure they're having that discipline to look at data to make sure that you are really tracking performance year over year against key leading other law departments and peers is so foundational.
And I feel like I learned something from the data every year that I didn't already know or didn't already guess, or at least I feel validated in some concern or feeling I had, every year.
That's right. That's right. And again, we can never just say we know, right? Because especially in this technology environment, so much is changing. And things that were big one
Every
year,
day.
we're seeing a swing in a different direction. Even the way law departments are engaging outside counsel, the data, there's a swing and different priorities and focuses. And so helping departments to think about, how do I prioritize? What does my roadmap look like? And I think you had mentioned helping the data inform, right, your path forward to becoming that law department of the future. I think it was really kind of what we're trying to achieve. As we kind of bring this session to a close, I just have a few kind of lightning round questions, right, just to kind of run through and get perspectives from both of you on. The first one, I think, is we talked about the maturity of legal ops. Anything that you would say as kind of what is the biggest myth about legal ops maturity right now? Anything out there? We talked about kind of the evolution, the journey. What do you think is the biggest myth out there in your view?
The biggest myth?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I don't know what the biggest myth about maturity is, but the biggest myth about legal ops is that we're all about paying bills and vendor management. That is not what we are about anymore.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Oyango?
No question about it. I think one of the biggest myths is that it's sort of this other thing. It's something else. It's something that's in a different vacuum when it should really be legal operations itself, and its maturity, its maturation should cut across the entire business line. It should cut across the entire department. It's not
Yes.
something else in another wing that's doing some magic and, as Stacy said, making bills less or being more efficient. It's cutting across the entire spectrum of the organization.
I love that. I think becoming the fabric of the legal function, so integrated
I love
into
that.
it.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
concept because I think that is so, so well said. It shouldn't be looked at as this separate function working in parallel, but it needs to be integrated into everything it does. So I think that's an awesome perspective. The second one is, what is one metric you think every GC should be tracking, but maybe they're not? Stacy, thoughts there?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's a hard one because there's so many good ones. I think the metric that every GC should be tracking is so basic, is what is your cycle time? Because if you can really get a handle on your cycle time, no matter what kind of matter you're doing, you can get a sense for how efficiently your lawyers are working and where technology can help improve that. And there are so many GCs, I would say the majority of them cannot quote that metric. And it's more important than how much you're paying your outside counsel, I gotta tell you.
Yeah. Oyango, any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When I was a general counsel, one of the things that I focused on, I focused on all the tangible things that you can touch, the cost, the outside counsel, like what Stacey said, the outside counsel costs, our staff costs, our time, how much time we were devoting to a project. What I think GCs need to be focused on now is the actual impact that they're having on the entire enterprise. So taking all of those tangible numbers, all of those time savings, all of the cost savings, and then looking broadly to track How are we moving the needle on the business from point A to point B? Because that's the storyline that they need to be
Yes.
communicating at the C-suite level. That's what the
Yes.
CEOs and the COOs want to know about. That's what they want to hear about. How the legal
That's right.
team is helping move the business forward. So I think they need to be finding they need to find a way, if they're not already, to be tracking how they're moving the business forward with all of these
That's
other
right.
tangible data sets that's building into
That
the work of the legal team.
And Oyango's right.
Perfect.
It is really hard to measure productivity versus
Yeah.
revenue generation.
Mm,
Legal has always been a revenue spending mechanism. It's never considered a revenue making, even though you can't make one sale without a contract, and contracts take legal.
right.
So
Right.
figuring out how to tell that story, that
Yes.
this is what my team did, this is what the company made
Mm,
last year, or these are the sales that it generated, and this is how those two things tie together. Part of that is, what did we do? Part of that is, how quickly did we do it, and
yeah.
how much further along did you get in your process?
Mm,
It's all kind of tied together,
yeah.
and it's tricky to tell that story, and it's very hard to give someone a roadmap for doing that, because it's different everywhere. But this is what we do.
Love it. Love that. Love that. What will the high performing law department look like in 3 years?
I think a high performing department is going to do two things. One, understand its artificial intelligence inputs and what it does on its own. And it's going to have better, stronger strategic relationships with outside counsel that helps kind of move the bottom line of the organization in unison. Those that'll be successful will have strong relationships with outside counsel. Those that are not will not be using AI in a way that's productive, that's effective, that's efficient, and they will not have those strong relationships with outside counsel that work as partnerships in order to
Mm,
advance the business, not
yeah.
just throwing everything out to outside counsel just because.
Yeah.
I think the highest performing law departments of the future are going to be really top heavy, in the sense that their lawyers are going to be performing at a level that we've never expected lawyers to
Mm,
perform in house before. I think the really good ones are going to figure out really quickly how to get the low hanging fruit done automatically and automated and by technology. I don't think lawyers are going to be touching things like engagement letters and NDAs and even SOW, even simple SOWs and procurement agreements under $25,000. I don't think lawyers are going to touch that
yeah.
stuff. I think we are going to expect even our first years to be doing work that maybe right now is being done by a 3L.
Mm,
Because I think that technology is going to allow and push our lawyers to perform at a much higher level. And those that figure that out early are going to have in-house legal departments that are producing better quality and bringing stuff in and giving only the really tough stuff to outside
yeah.
counsel. So I think it's going to fundamentally change the way that we're practicing law and doing business.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, this elevation of the legal function is what I anticipate as well, seeing, high performing law departments moving towards in the future. This has been
And I think
tremendous.
it's
Yeah,
important. I think it's important
absolutely.
because, maybe we've gotten a little stale, as, we're doing a lot of the same things over and over again. And technology has a tendency to make us a little bit complacent.
Right.
So maybe this is a really good shakeup.
Yeah. No, it could be. Absolutely. And my last question is there anything legal ops should stop doing immediately? Anything that you see? We talked a lot about what they can be doing, what they will be doing. Anything that you think legal ops leaders should stop doing immediately?
Oyango, what do you
I'm gonna
think?
reverse it. I'm gonna say too. I think one of the things that they should stop doing is to realize how much power, control, influence they have in their
Mm,
organizations, and realize so they should stop not realizing it. Right? They should start by understanding how they communicate between the legal teams and IT, and how they kind of sit in this very opportunistic role to leverage technology, artificial intelligence, and help drive the business forward, to be transformative, to be an influencer as to what their in-house teams are working on in order to enhance the law departments as well as the organization. So it's more or less to stop not thinking about it, stop not putting
Mm,
yourself in the strategic position,
yeah,
and really start doing that to elevate the role as well as the industry and the impact to the business.
love
I
it.
think any legal operations professional that's listening to this should stop doing anything administrative right this
Mm,
second. Um, Anything that you are doing that smacks of something that your AA did 10 years ago is something that you shouldn't be doing. Technology should be doing for you, or just doesn't need to be done. Things like process writing, technology should be doing at least the first draft for you. Reading your emails, summarizing things, doing red lines, like any of that stuff you should have an AI assistant doing that for you as of right now.
Thanks for listening to Legal Soundings. Subscribe for future episodes. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Harbor's work across law firms and corporate legal departments, visit harborglobal.com.